The Midnight Train. You know how teenagers think they're untouchable? Like the world is just one big game and they'll never lose? That was Ryan. 17, wiry with too much adrenaline and too little sense. He lived in a town where nothing ever happened. Just sagging porches, cracked sidewalks, and a single diner that closed by 10. Nights stretched forever, thick with heat and boredom. So when his parents fell asleep, Ryan slipped out. He moved like a shadow across the quiet streets, sneakers whispering on asphalt. His shortcut, always the same, was the abandoned train tracks on the edge of town. Nobody used them. They were rusted, half buried in weeds, leading nowhere. Kids whispered the tracks were cursed. 50 years ago, they said, the midnight train barreled through town one last time and derailed in fire. The crew, the passengers, gone. Since then, no trains, just steel bones cutting across forgotten land. But Ryan didn't buy ghost stories. He liked how the tracks felt, secret, dangerous. A place parents warned him not to go, which meant it was the perfect place to be. That night, though, the air felt heavier. Even the crickets stopped their shrill chorus when his phone blinked 12:47 a.m. He froze. For the first time, he noticed how still the world had become, like everything was waiting. Then he heard it, a whistle, flong, rising from the dark. Ryan laughed under his breath, trying to shake it off. Old pipes, he muttered. But the sound grew sharper, closer. And before he could convince himself otherwise, a pale glow bloomed on the horizon. Two beams cutting through the night. Headlights. His chest tightened. The ground quivered beneath his shoes, a deep vibration humming through the rusted rails. And that's when Ryan realized he wasn't alone on the tracks. But when morning came, the story sounded too good to keep to himself. At the diner, with his friends half asleep over greasy eggs and flat sodas, Ryan leaned in, grinned sharp with adrenaline. "You wouldn't believe it," he said. "The midnight train, it's real. I saw it." His buddies groaned, rolled their eyes. One muttered, "Those tracks, they've been dead since our parents were kids." Another added, "The last wreck burned the line down. Nobody rebuilt it. There's nothing out there." Ryan swore on his own life. He described the whistle, the sparks, the monstrous engine breathing fire like some iron beast. But the more he talked, the less they believed. Finally, his friend Jenna leaned in, eyes dark and steady. "You shouldn't joke about that," she whispered. "My granddad saw it once. He said the train doesn't just pass, it takes." The table went silent. Ryan forced a laugh, brushing it off, but something in Jenna's tone stuck like a splinter. All day it gnawed at him, the way the headlights burned into his eyes, the way the rails shook, the way the night didn't feel like night anymore. By evening, he couldn't sit still. His parents watched TV in the living room, oblivious, while Ryan slipped back into the dark. The air was thicker that night. No wind, no bugs, just a heavy silence pressing on his ears. The moon hung low, swollen, and the rails gleamed faintly like veins of silver cutting through the earth. Ryan stood there, waiting. Midnight crawled past. Nothing. Just his own pulse hammering in his throat. He started to laugh at himself, turning to leave. Then it came, the whistle, shrill, piercing, louder than before. The horizon lit up, a white blaze cutting the dark. Headlights roared forward, swallowing the world. But this time, when Ryan dove for the weeds, there was nothing beneath him. No dirt, no grass. Just steel stretching in every direction. Tracks that didn't end. Fire racing along them. Ryan staggered, eyes wide, as the train thundered toward him again, its windows glowing red, faces pressed against the glass, faces screaming. He spun, desperate to leap clear, but the world had shifted. The old tracks weren't a shortcut anymore. They were a trap. The whistle screamed like a throat being ripped open. The world narrowed to two rails and the white-hot maw bearing down. Ryan's feet trembled, not from cold, but from a fear that tasted metallic on his tongue. He had always thought fear was something you laughed at later. Now it was a live thing, slapping him. The train was heat. Its engine coughed flame that licked the night, and the air around it hummed with a high note that vibrated his bones. Through the windows, faces pressed to the glass. Not quite human. Mouths moved, teeth glinting, eyes hollow and bright. They smiled and screamed. Ryan thought to run, to sprint along the ballast, find a shoulder, jump into the ditch. But there was no shoulder. The earth had been stripped, like a rug pulled free and only steel left. A metallic bang struck the car. A hand, pale, impossibly long, snapped through a cracked window, groping. It found his sleeve and clawed. the world slowed. The hand closed. Everything narrowed to that hand and the choice in his chest. Let go and be taken. Become the legend whispered in diners, or do the stupid human thing. Grab on. He lunged. Flesh met flesh. The fingers were colder than midnight, smelling of oil and pennies. The train jerked as if insulted, a violence that slammed the air. Ryan felt pulled with it, an impossible tug that threatened to wrench him off his feet. He dug his heels and shoved. The hand loosened and something clattered into his palm. A locket, warm and oddly familiar. He opened it with shaking fingers. Inside was a photo smeared with soot. The face was his mother's, younger than he remembered, smiling like someone before everything went wrong. For a heartbeat, the passengers were ordinary, tear-stained, frightened, looking at him with a pleading that felt like accusation. Then the train vomited flame, surged, and vanished into the dark as if swallowed by night. Silence dropped. The rails cooled. Ryan stood, the locket heavy, breath ragged. He had reached into the thing that ate time and come away with proof. Proof and a promise. The choice he made, an arm thrown toward a window, a small act of theft from a monster, had changed him. It had opened a door that would not stay shut. He knew they would come for it, and that he had invited them. Someday soon. At first, they thought it was just another brush fire. Dry summer grass catching under the heat of July, maybe a cigarette flicked from a passing car. But when the smoke thinned, the truth sat there waiting. The blackened rails, glowing faintly with heat, and the burned circle on the earth where Ryan should have been. The sheriff stood with his hat low, boot grinding into the ash. He didn't call it a crime scene, didn't call for backup. He only spat into the dirt and said, "Tracks have been dead 50 years. Dead things don't burn on their own." The deputies shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting anywhere but the rails. By noon, the whole town knew. Mothers kept their kids inside. Old men at the diner sipped coffee in silence, glancing at the door like they expected someone to walk through it, someone who never would. Ryan's friends sat in their usual booth, staring at the empty space beside them. One of them swore they still smelled smoke on his jacket, though he hadn't been near the tracks. Jenna didn't say a word, just twisted a napkin until it tore in her hands. At Ryan's house, his mother stood in the doorway, eyes vacant, refusing to believe the sheriff's mumbled explanation. She kept repeating, "He's just out with his friends. He'll be back for dinner." No one had the heart to argue. But in quiet corners, the whispers grew. People spoke of the midnight train again, voices hushed but urgent. Some said Ryan had been taken, claimed by the passengers still trapped on their endless ride. Others swore he jumped aboard willingly, leaving the living world behind. A few muttered about the locket that no one had seen, but that someone swore he'd been clutching the last time he was spotted. Night came heavy, pressing against windows. Families double-locked doors. And yet, faintly down by the abandoned tracks, some swore they heard it. The whistle, long and low, cutting the dark like a warning. And somewhere, though no one could prove it, there were those who claimed they saw him. A figure in the glare of phantom headlights. A boy standing on the rails, staring back at the town that had never believed him. Not gone, not alive. Something in between. The town moved on, the way small towns do. New gossip replaced old, the diner changed its menu, and Ryan's name faded into the same hush reserved for things parents warned their kids about but never explained. The tracks grew colder by day, weeds reclaiming the earth. But at night they pulsed with something wrong, something hungry. Some swore they saw the glow from their windows, the flash of white headlights cutting across the horizon where no road existed. Others claimed they heard the whistle in their dreams, waking with the taste of smoke in their throats. And every so often a traveler passing through town would mention seeing a boy on the rails. Thin, shadow-eyed, holding something that caught the light like a locket. Ryan had been restless, reckless. Now he was restless still, but bound to the steel veins that stitched the dark. He had reached for the train, and in doing so, it had claimed him, changed him. He wasn't the town's troublemaker anymore. He was part of its legend. And legends don't die, they wait. The sheriff never returned to the site. His deputies wouldn't patrol near the tracks after midnight. And Jenna? She left flowers at the edge of the burned earth, whispering prayers into the soil. She said sometimes she felt eyes watching her, familiar and sad, as though Ryan hadn't chosen to leave, but couldn't find his way back. Now they say, if you walk near those tracks past midnight, you'll hear it too. The whistle, the grinding steel. And if you're unlucky, if the fire chooses you, you'll hear a boy's scream, sharp and endless, carried on the smoke. So tell me, if you heard that whistle tonight at 12:47 a.m., would you stand and watch? Or would you run and pray the fire doesn't follow? Thank you for listening to this story. If it sent a chill down your spine, do me a favor. Like this video so more people find it, and subscribe for more stories told night after night. Share it with someone who thinks ghost trains are just old fairy tales. I promise they'll think twice. Another story waits for you on the screen. I'll see you back here tomorrow. The Baby Monitor. You ever notice how silence in a house with a newborn never really feels like silence? It's the kind of quiet that's alive, breathing, twitching, waiting for the next cry. A fragile calm, like glass balanced on a ledge. Claire and Jason lived in that kind of silence. First-time parents, proud and deliriously tired, in their two-story colonial tucked neatly at the end of a quiet suburban cul-de-sac. Nights were a ritual. Feed the baby, rock her gently until the little body softened, then lay her in the crib upstairs. They'd tiptoe back down the hallway like burglars, each breath held, praying she wouldn't stir. On the night it all began, the Baby Monitor blinked softly on the nightstand. A plastic guardian angel, a glowing promise that distance was no danger. Jason joked sometimes that it was like having a second set of ears, an invisible babysitter. Claire liked the comfort. Neither of them thought twice about the faint crackle of static that occasionally bled through. It was almost 1 a.m. The neighborhood slept. Their world was finally still. They sat downstairs together, Claire scrolling through her phone, Jason nursing a lukewarm beer, both silently grateful for the lull. Upstairs, their daughter cooed once, then settled, and then it came. Not the cry of a baby, not the restless murmur of a child dreaming, a sound older, deeper, a voice, low, hoarse, humming the bones of a lullaby. Jason froze with the bottle at his lips. Claire's eyes snapped to the monitor, where the little green lights pulsed in rhythm with the sound. For one fragile heartbeat, their exhaustion told them it was a trick. A radio signal, maybe, interference from a neighbor's cordless phone. But the baby giggled, the sweet, high-pitched sound of recognition, and the voice kept singing. Jason's breath hitched. He scooped the baby up, holding her like proof she was real, alive, untouched. Claire pressed her trembling palm to the crib sheet, cold, too cold, as if she had been gone longer than a few minutes. They searched the room, closet doors yanked open, curtains whipped aside. Nothing, no broken glass, no muddy footprints, no reason a child could vanish upstairs and reappear downstairs. Yet the humming, that voice, it was real. They had both heard it. Claire checked the locks on every window. Jason paced the hallway, listening for creaks in the floorboards, for anything out of place. The house gave nothing back. When they returned to their room, the monitor blinked steadily, silent, innocent. The baby breathed softly between them, her tiny fist curled against Jason's chest. "You saw it too," Claire whispered. Not a question, a confirmation of their shared madness. Jason nodded, throat tight. He wanted to say something logical, radio interference, maybe the neighbor's TV, but the words turned to ash before they left his mouth. Logic didn't explain why their baby had moved. They tried to sleep. They failed. Every flicker of static from the monitor jolted them awake. Every shadow across the wall turned sinister. The next night, they swore to stay awake, to catch it. At 12:47, the monitor hissed alive, a lullaby, faint, off-key. Claire leaned close, her knuckles white around the device. "It's the same song." Jason hushed her, though his own heart hammered. They waited, breath shallow. The humming grew louder, clearer, threading itself into the room like smoke. Then light laughter, their daughters, soft, soft, sweet, answering someone. Jason's body surged with adrenaline. He bolted for the stairs, 2 steps at a time. Claire followed, nearly tripping in her panic. The nursery door creaked open. Empty again. This time, the crib was rocking. Back and forth, slow, deliberate. Jason froze in the doorway, his skin crawling. Claire stifled a scream, and then the monitor in her hand crackled. A whisper, low and ragged, "She's mine." Jason's blood iced over. He snatched the monitor, staring at its dead screen glowing faint green, though the cord dangled limp on the floor. The voice bled through louder now, closer, intimate. Not carried by static, but whispering straight into the room. Claire stirred. Her eyes opened, unfocused. Jason, do you hear it? He hushed her, pressing the baby tighter against his chest. Stay here. His voice cracked like dry wood. He stepped into the hallway. The air was colder, thick with the sour scent of damp earth. The hum deepened, following him, threading its way down the hall like a shadow. The nursery door was ajar, rocking faintly on its hinges. Jason pushed it open, fists clenched, every muscle begging him to turn back. Inside, the crib rocked, empty, again. But this time not by some invisible hand. A shape hunched beside it, pale, tall, skin stretched thin like old paper, its head bowed, face hidden as it crooned that broken lullaby. Jason's breath stuttered. Get away from her. The figure lifted its head, eyes black and bottomless. A grin split its face, too wide, too wet. She's mine, it whispered, the same voice from the monitor. I've been watching since the day she was born. You only thought she was yours. Jason staggered back, bile rising. His fight-or-flight screamed for escape, but behind him Claire gasped. She was in the doorway now, clutching the baby, paralyzed. The thing rose to its full height, towering over them, its grin stretching into something jagged. You cannot keep her from me. Not forever. Jason's body moved before thought. He grabbed the monitor, still glowing, still whispering, and hurled it into the crib. The device shattered, sparks crackling against the wood. The figure shrieked, a sound like glass breaking inside his skull. The walls vibrated. The lights above burst with a pop, plunging the nursery into darkness. Jason grabbed Claire's arm, dragging her back down the hall. The baby screamed, the sound pure, terrified. Behind them the humming returned, low, steady, rising with every step they took. Jason knew, with a sick clarity, that this was no break-in. No man. No stranger. This thing hadn't come into their home. It had always been there. Jason sat upright in bed, every nerve wired raw. The sound didn't come through speakers now. It came through the walls, the air, the house, a vibration too low to be mistaken for anything natural. Claire clutched the baby tighter, whispering, "Tell me you hear that." Her voice was already breaking, as if she knew the answer. Jason forced himself out of bed. Each step toward the corner felt like wading through water. The humming was there, faint, deliberate, rising like a lullaby sung from the bottom of a well. He flicked on the lamp. Nothing. Just shadows stretching where shadows should be. But the sound didn't stop. They didn't sleep that night, or the night after. Every creak of floorboards, every hiss of the pipes twisted into the echo of that hum. Jason stayed awake with coffee in trembling hands, his eyes raw from watching doorways and corners that refused to stay still. Claire grew pale, jumpy at every sound, clutching their child like the world was trying to pry her away. When family visited, Jason forced a smile. Claire rehearsed excuses, sleepless nights, stress, the usual burdens of new parents. No one noticed the way Jason's hand never strayed far from the baby, or the way Claire flinched when silence stretched too long. The police didn't come back. Why would they? No evidence, no reason, just a broken monitor and parents too scared to admit what they'd heard. Jason tried to rationalize stress, hallucinations, exhaustion, but then the baby started changing. She'd laugh at nothing, reaching for empty corners. Her eyes tracked movements Jason couldn't see. Sometimes she hummed, the same fractured lullaby. Claire wept when she heard it, rocking their daughter, begging her to stop. Jason only sat frozen, the weight of dread pressing against his ribs. Because deep down, he knew the truth. Destroying the monitor hadn't ended anything. It had only torn down the walls, and now whatever had been watching through the plastic eyes of that device was in the room with them. They stopped sleeping the way people sleep when they believe the world is safe. Sleep became a series of shallow crossings, dozing, waking, scanning, nights folded into mornings without the comfort of forgetting. Claire and Jason learned the shapes of their house again, not by touch, but by the sounds it made when something else was awake in it. The lullaby came at 1 a.m. like a clockwork thief, sliding through walls and settling into the corners, patient as rot. Sometimes it pulsed in the hallway, a soft thing that made Jason's skin crawl. Sometimes it pooled under the nursery door and hummed there for a long time, as if deciding whether to wake the baby. And sometimes it hovered at the foot of their bed, a whisper too close to breathe around. They tried ceremonies that felt like defiance, white noise machines, candles, small prayers muttered in the dark. They moved the crib, bought another monitor from another brand, left lights on, left the front and back doors locked and double locked. Whatever it was learned around them, it adapted. The lullaby threaded through different frequencies, found new ways to touch the house. The baby watched shadows as if she could read them. She laughed at the corner where nothing stood, and sometimes reached into the air with tiny, deliberate hands. Claire cried a lot in the kitchen, silently, while Jason pretended to script explanations for friends and family. Postpartum, he said once to a kindly neighbor, and the neighbor brought casseroles and prayers and left, satisfied. Months passed. Their friends called less. The police file grew thin and polite. Sleep deprivation sharpened the edges of daily life. Arguments over dishes, long silences over coffee, the small betrayals of two people who no longer trusted a home to be only a home. Jason stopped leaving the house without looking back twice. Claire stopped reading in bed because the pages felt like invitations. They both became very good at noticing small things. A scent like rain on dry dirt, the way curtains shivered when no wind stirred. The baby grew. She learned to walk, to say a handful of words, to sing fragments of that same warped lullaby in a voice that made Claire's blood stop and Jason's fists clench. When she hummed it in the grocery store, strangers smiled and thought it was a cute thing toddlers did. When she hummed it at night with her eyes closed and her little lips moving like a mapmaker tracing routes none of them wanted to follow, Claire would swallow hard and press her face into her child's hair until the shape of the house blurred. They never turned the monitor on again. The plastic lay in the trash, wrapped in 2 heavy garbage bags, a small, guilty funeral. But the sound kept coming, because this was not about a device. It was about a presence that used a device once and had found other ways to be near. It settled like a promise, patient and inexorable. So when you tuck a child in tonight and the house breathes and you think the monitor is only tracking breaths, remember that some things learn how to watch without eyes. If you hear a lullaby in the dark that is not yours, do not laugh it off as the world being clever. Do not smile and call it interference. Turn the light on, hold the child close, and for God's sake, listen to where the sound is coming from. If this story gripped you, hit like to support the channel, subscribe for daily stories, and share this with someone who loves being kept awake. Thank you for listening and watching. There is another video on your screen that will keep the night company. I'll see you back here tomorrow. The house call. They say the country is quiet at night, peaceful, but peace is only comforting when you're not alone with your thoughts. Take Henry, an old farmer out on the edge of town. His house stood crooked against the dark horizon, its paint long peeled, its porch sagging like a tired old man's shoulders. It was the kind of place that remembered winters with cracked boards and whistling drafts, where the silence after sundown pressed so hard it felt like weight on the chest. Henry had grown used to that silence. Since his wife passed, 3 years gone now, he'd filled it with her voice. Not really, of course, but in whispers. Sometimes, when the loneliness dug too deep, he'd sit in her rocking chair and speak into the dark, pretending her answer would float back, pretending her shadow still warmed the corner by the fireplace. The neighbors said he was fading. The kind of man who stayed behind while time walked on without him. But Henry still did his chores, fed the hens, tended the corn, kept the routine like clockwork, because routine was safer than thinking. Lately, though, even the routine couldn't guard him. At first, it was the porch creaking under invisible steps. Then the sound of boots dragging across dirt, stopping just shy of the door. He told himself it was the wind, always the wind. Because wind was easier than the truth, that something had started visiting him after midnight. And then came the knocks. 3 sharp raps on the farmhouse door at 3 in the morning, always 3, always precise. The first time, Henry didn't move. The second, he loaded the shotgun and sat breathing in the dark until the sun rose. The third time, he dared to look through the peephole. And what he saw was not the wind. It was a man in an old doctor's coat, long and gray, holding a black bag in one hand, his face pale, his voice low and gravelly. "I've come for your wife," the stranger said. But Henry's wife had been dead for years. The porch was empty. Cold night air swept in, stinging Henry's skin. The boards creaked under his boots as he stepped out, shotgun raised, eyes darting. Nothing but the field stretching into darkness. Nothing but the wind moaning through the trees. But there were footprints, muddy, heavy, pressed deep into the wood. They trailed from the steps to the porch rail, and then stopped, just stopped, as if the figure had vanished into thin air. Henry's chest tightened. He backed inside, bolted the door, and sat in his chair with the shotgun across his lap until dawn. Sleep never came. The next morning, he told himself it was a dream. It had to be. A trick of grief, or the mind playing games in the small hours. But when he opened the door again, the prints were still there. Dark mud smeared across the porch like bruises. That night, Henry poured himself a drink. One drink became three. By midnight, he sat in the living room with the shotgun propped against his knee, eyes glued to the clock on the wall. Tick, tick, tick. 3 o'clock. The pounding started again, louder this time. The walls rattled with each strike. Henry staggered to the door, half drunk, half awake. Through the peephole, the doctor was back. Same coat, same bag, same voice hissing through the crack. "I've come for your wife," Henry shouted through the door, voice cracking. "She's dead. Leave her be." But the figure didn't move. He just kept standing there, breathing heavy, fogging the glass with each word. "You'll see her soon." Rage burned through Henry's fear. He unbolted the door and flung it wide, shotgun raised. But again, nothing, just footprints. This time they stretched farther, across the yard, into the dirt. He followed them with the barrel of the gun, but they ended halfway across the grass, cut off like a torn page. That night, Henry didn't bother sleeping. He sat on the porch till sunrise, watching the yard, waiting for the thing to return. But by the third night, the knocks came again, and this time the voice called his name, Henry. Not her name anymore. His. Henry's breath fogged the glass as he pressed his face closer, shotgun trembling in his hands. His ears strained for any hint of movement, wind in the trees, the shuffle of boots. But there was nothing, just the prints. They shone wet in the moonlight, glistening like blood, fresh, too fresh. Henry's heart thudded against his ribs. He stepped out onto the porch, barrel aimed straight at the darkness. His boots landed right inside the stranger's steps. 1, 2, 3. The prints stopped. But Henry didn't. He leaned forward, peering into the field. The corn stood motionless, stalks black against the sky. The barn squatted in silence, roof sagging under years of weight. No movement, no sound. And then he heard it. Not a footstep, not a knock, a whisper. "Henry." It came from everywhere at once, behind him, inside the house, right against his ear. His whole body jolted. He swung the shotgun, finger white on the trigger. "Show yourself," he barked. But his voice broke halfway through. The whisper came again, low, dragging, gravel wrapped in smoke. "Henry, it's time." The door slammed behind him with a crack like a gunshot. The porch shuddered under his feet. He spun back, chest heaving, only to see the doctor, standing in the doorway, coat gray as ash, bag in one hand, face pale, eyes hollow. "I've come," the man rasped, "for you." Henry froze. The gun shook in his grip. He could smell the man, earth and rot, the damp of open graves. His finger curled around the trigger. He thought of his wife, her laugh, her rocking chair waiting in the corner. For one wild moment he believed. If he pulled that trigger, maybe he could drive this thing back. Maybe he could hold on to what little life he had left. But the doctor didn't move. He just waited. Still as stone. Patient. Henry screamed, raised the shotgun, and fired. The blast lit the porch, the field, the night itself. White fire against the dark. When the smoke cleared, the doorway was empty. Only the muddy prints remained, and they were leading into Henry's house. The sheriff was the first to step into the farmhouse. He'd known Henry for 40 years, shared beers with him at the Legion Hall, bought corn from his stand every summer. Now he stood over the old man's body, hat clutched in both hands, throat tight. Henry sat in his chair like he'd been waiting, shotgun across his knees, mouth slightly open as though he'd been about to say something or answer someone. His eyes, though, those eyes weren't the eyes of a man drifting off in sleep. They were wide, startled, staring at the door. There wasn't a mark on him. No bruise, no cut, no sign of struggle. His heart had simply stopped. The doctor from town signed the death certificate, shook his head, muttered about age and stress. But the deputies whispered about something else. They pointed to the porch boards where muddy footprints still stained the wood. Heavy, uneven. They stretched from the door to the chair inside, and then stopped, as if the visitor had taken root right there. The neighbors said Henry had been fading for weeks. They told stories of him muttering to himself in the fields, sitting on the porch through the dead of night, waiting for something. One swore she saw a man standing at Henry's gate just before dawn, tall, pale, coat flapping in the wind. When she blinked, he was gone. They buried Henry beside his wife on the hill. A modest funeral, quiet words, the kind of send-off small towns know by heart. People shook their heads, said at least he'd gone peacefully. But the whispers didn't stop. Because when the undertaker closed Henry's eyes, he swore he felt them twitch beneath his fingers, like the old man was still seeing something standing at the door. And late at night, when the wind died and the country grew still, some folks claimed they could hear it echoing across the fields. 3 sharp knocks, always at 3 in the morning. In the weeks after Henry's death, the farm grew quieter than it had ever been. The chickens went untended, the corn shriveled, and the rocking chair on the porch never moved again. But the neighbors swore the house wasn't empty. More than one claimed to see a figure drifting up the lane at night. A tall man in a long coat, bag swinging at his side. He never knocked when anyone was watching. He only came when the world was silent, when the hour was darkest, when a house was heavy with grief. Some say Henry brought it on himself, answering the door when he should have stayed in bed, speaking to a thing that wasn't meant to be spoken to. Others insist the doctor would have come anyway. That's what he does. Makes his rounds, same as any physician, but his patients don't wake up better. What unsettles the town most isn't that Henry died. Old men die. It's that there wasn't a mark on him, no warning, no struggle, just a stillness. Like his heart had been signed off, his name scratched on a ledger only the doctor carried. And now, people bolt their doors tighter than before. They whisper prayers before sleep. Some keep candles burning at night, hoping the light will ward him off. But still, every so often, just before dawn, someone claims they hear it. 3 knocks, precise, cold, patient. The sound of a doctor making a house call. So tell me, if you heard knocking at your door at 3 a.m. and a voice said, "I've come for you," would you open it? Or would you sit in the dark, clutching the silence, and pray his rounds pass you by? Thank you for listening to tonight's story. If it left a chill in your bones, do me a favor. Like this video to help more people discover it. Subscribe so you never miss a tale, and share it with someone who needs a good scare tonight. There's another story waiting for you on your screen right now. Go ahead, click it, and I'll meet you there. Until then, sleep well. I'll see you back tomorrow. The dog that wasn't there. You ever notice how the road feels different at night? Not just quiet, alive. Every shadow looks like it's waiting. Every curve hides something you don't want to meet. That's where we find Tom, a trucker with 20 years on the highway. He's tough, no doubt, but tired. Nights get long. Coffee only does so much. His biggest fear? Not ghosts, not monsters, falling asleep at the wheel. That's how truckers die. But tonight, it isn't sleep that's coming for him. It's something else. The stretch of road is flat, endless, somewhere between Amarillo and nowhere. The sky is ink black, the stars blurred by heat waves rolling off asphalt even at midnight. The CB radio hisses with static. Tom drums his fingers on the steering wheel to keep himself awake. That's when he sees it. A dog. Black as the road itself. It bolts across his headlights, fast, sudden, eyes like 2 burning coals. Instinct kicks in. Tom jerks the wheel. His trailer fishtails. Tires scream. He barely manages to straighten out before slamming to a stop on the shoulder. His chest hammers like a jackhammer. He curses, wipes the sweat from his forehead. But when he looks back into the glow of his headlights, there's no dog. Nothing. Just empty road stretching forever. And here's the thing. Tom doesn't spook easy. He's seen deer, coyotes, even a naked man once running down a Kansas highway at 3 in the morning. But this rattles him. Because for a split second, he swears the dog didn't run through the light. It stood in it. Solid. Watching him. Then gone. That's when a pair of headlights appear in his rear view. Another truck slowing, pulling over behind him. And the driver, face pale, eyes wide, leans out and shouts, "Hey! You saw it too, didn't you?" The other trucker climbs down from his cab, boots crunching on gravel. He's wiry, older, with a face lined from decades of road miles. His hands shake as he lights a cigarette. "I damn near rolled my rig," the man mutters, exhaling smoke that glows orange in the night. Black dog, right in front of me, looks straight at me like it knew my name. Tom swallows, throat dry. He doesn't want to believe it, but the words gnaw at him. He's heard truck stop legends, phantoms on back roads, hitchhikers that vanish from the cab. But this isn't some story traded over lukewarm coffee. This was real, too real. The stranger leans closer, lowering his voice. Locals call it the devil's dog. You see it once, you don't make it past the week. Highway curse, that's what they say. Tom laughs, sharp and bitter. Highway curse, Jesus. You expect me to buy that? But even as he spits the words, his hands tremble. The man flicks his cigarette into the dark. Believe what you want. Just watch yourself. He climbs back into his cab, and soon the red glow of his taillights fades into the distance. Tom stands there a long time, the Texas night pressing in heavy. No sound but the insects humming and his own pulse in his ears. Finally, he gets back behind the wheel, tells himself it was nothing, a stray dog, a trick of light, his tired brain making monsters out of shadows. But the road doesn't let him forget. At the next diner, when Tom pushes through the door for coffee, every head turns. Old men at the counter go quiet. A waitress with weary eyes stares at him just a second too long before pouring. He overhears two locals whispering near the jukebox. Black dog's been seen again. Poor bastard, doesn't know what's coming. Tom's gut knots. He tells himself not to listen, but the weight of their silence clings to him. Every mile after that feels like a countdown. 3 nights later, the storm hits. Sheets of rain, wipers fighting to keep up. The highway's slick and treacherous. And there, through the blur of water, Tom sees it again. The dog, standing in the middle of the road, waiting. The rain comes down in sheets, hammering the windshield like 1,000 fists. Tom grips the wheel so hard his knuckles shine bone white, wipers thrashing left and right in a losing battle against the storm. Every muscle in his body hums with tension. He's wired, over-caffeinated, but his eyelids feel heavy, his brain thick as tar. And then he sees it. The dog, blacker than the night itself, standing dead center in his lane, eyes glowing like 2 furnaces in the downpour. It doesn't move, doesn't flinch, just stares. Tom's breath rips from his chest. He slams the brakes, the tires scream, the trailer whips sideways. The world turns into chaos, metal shrieking, rubber shredding, the deafening roar of 18 tons of steel breaking loose. For one horrifying second, the cab lifts, the headlights catch those burning eyes again through the sheets of rain. The dog isn't running this time. It's waiting. The rig jackknifes. Sparks shower as the trailer gouges the pavement. Tom fights the wheel, his whole body straining, heart tearing through his ribs. He thinks of his kids, his ex-wife, the quiet apartment waiting back in Amarillo. He doesn't want to die here, not on some forgotten stretch of blacktop cursed by a ghost dog. And then the crash. The sound is like the sky splitting in two. Metal screams, glass bursts, the cab spins, spins, spins. The world tilts sideways, then silence slams down, broken only by the hiss of rain and the ticking of cooling metal. Tom crawls free, body broken but alive. The storm howls around him. In the shattered beams of his rig's headlights, the road lies empty. No dog, no eyes, nothing. But then, far off, cutting through the rain, headlights. Another truck, swerving too late, a sickening crunch, a burst of fire, a horn locked in one endless cry. It's him, the other driver, the one from that night, the man who warned him. Tom staggers to his knees, staring at the wreckage burning down the highway, and in the corner of his vision, just for a heartbeat, he sees it. The black dog, sitting calmly at the edge of the road, its cold red eyes locked on him. Watching, waiting. The wreck makes the morning papers. Fatal crash on Highway 61. They print the other driver's name, his hometown, his family left behind. Tom's name doesn't make it past the police report. Just another survivor, stitched up, shaken, sent back to the road. But the whispers follow him. At truck stops, at diners, at fuel stations. Men glance at him sideways, their voices dropping low when he passes. That's the guy who saw the black dog. Some cross themselves. Others won't meet his eyes. Tom shrugs it off out loud, but inside he feels hollowed out. Every time he starts the engine, his gut tightens like a fist. He drives slower now, eyes glued to the shoulder, scanning the dark for movement. Coffee cools in the cup holder untouched. Cigarettes burn to the filter one after another, smoke curling into the stale air of the cab. Nights are the worst. The rain hisses on the glass, the CB crackles with ghost chatter, and the hum of the tires becomes something else in his head, something rhythmic, like the padding of paws on wet asphalt. And always that question gnaws at him. Was it fate, some curse sewn into the highway itself, or just exhaustion playing cruel tricks on men who live their lives in motion? The insurance adjuster calls it an accident. The sheriff shrugs it off as bad weather, bad luck. The papers say coincidence, but Tom, he doesn't believe in coincidences anymore. Not after the way the other driver looked that night, pale and certain. Not after watching his rig burn while those eyes, those impossible red eyes, flickered in the rain. He tells himself he'll quit, park the rig for good. But the bills pile up, and the road calls him back like it always does. So here he sits again behind the wheel of a loaner truck, hands trembling around the gear shift, eyes fixed on the stretch of blacktop ahead. The night is alive, breathing, waiting. And in the reflection of his windshield, just for a heartbeat, he swears he sees it again. Two glowing coals burning in the dark, watching, waiting. The weeks roll by, but for Tom, the road is never the same. Every mile feels heavy, stretched thin with silence. The hum of the engine no longer comforts, it taunts him, a reminder of how quickly it can all be ripped away. He drives slower now, cautious, but it isn't just fear of another wreck, it's the sense that he's being watched. Sometimes when the sky is clear and the road lies wide open, he almost convinces himself it was all in his head. A trick of fatigue, a coincidence wrapped in bad luck. But then he catches it. A flicker in the corner of his eye, a shadow too solid to be nothing, the silhouette of a dog just at the edge of the shoulder, never chasing, never leaving, always there. He thinks about the other driver, about the locals at the diner who went quiet the second he walked in, about the way the stories always end the same. Someone doesn't make it home. The curse isn't about seeing the black dog. It's about what happens after, the waiting, the wondering, the knowing. Tom doesn't talk about it anymore. He doesn't joke with waitresses, doesn't share war stories with other truckers at midnight diners. He's changed, carved down into someone smaller, quieter, carrying a weight no one else wants to touch. But on those long, empty stretches of road, when the night presses in and the highway breathes, he feels it. The eyes, the watching. Like the black dog isn't behind him at all, but ahead, waiting for him to catch up. So tell me, if you're ever out there, alone on a midnight highway, and a black dog steps into your headlights, would you keep driving? Or would you pull over and pray it isn't looking back at you? Thanks for riding through this story with me. If it left a chill in your bones, hit that like button. It helps this channel grow and reach more listeners like you. Don't forget to subscribe for daily stories that will keep you up at night, and share this with someone who loves a good scare. There's another tale waiting for you right now on your screen. Go ahead, click it. I'll see you back here tomorrow. The wrong number. You ever notice how the worst nights always start off ordinary? Meet Daniel, 19. Just another college kid, drowning in textbooks, Red Bull cans stacked like trophies on his desk. He isn't special. He's just exhausted, overcaffeinated, and chasing a passing grade like his life depends on it. It's late, 2 a.m. late. The kind of hour when campus feels like a graveyard, silent except for the hum of vending machines and the occasional squeak of sneakers in the hallway. Daniel's roommate snores from the top bunk, the kind of deep animal snore that makes you wonder how he's still alive. Daniel keeps reading, eyes half shut, brain hanging by a thread, and then his phone buzzes. Not a text, a call. He glances at the clock. 2:13 a.m., unknown number. He almost ignores it, but something about the silence in the room makes him reach for the phone. Hello? His voice is a whisper. The line hisses like static, and then so faint he almost misses it. A woman's voice. Daniel. Just his name. That's it. Soft, familiar, almost intimate. He freezes. It's probably a prank, he tells himself. Somebody from the dorm screwing with him. He hangs up, shakes it off. But then it rings again. Same time, 2:13. Same number. And when he answers, the voice is sharper. Clearer, like it's standing inside his room. Daniel, I can see you. He spins in his chair, heart hammering, eyes darting to the window, the door, the shadowed corners of the dorm. Nothing. Just silence, thick as tar. That's when he notices the reflection in his laptop screen, not his own, a pale outline behind him, smiling, and the phone still pressed to his ear, whispering his name. Daniel dropped the receiver like it had burned him. It clattered against the floor, swinging on its cord like a noose. His pulse roared in his ears. That wasn't possible. Phones didn't work without power, but the voice kept breathing. Daniel. He stumbled back, almost tripping over the mountain of textbooks. His roommate snored above, oblivious. For one desperate second, Daniel thought about shaking him awake, but something inside told him not to. Like if he pulled another soul into this, the voice would only get louder. He grabbed the phone and shoved it under a pillow. Smothered. Silence. Relief cracked across his chest, fragile but real. He sat down, laughing nervously, shaking his head at himself. Stress, that's all. Too much caffeine, not enough sleep. He pulled his notes back into his lap, tried to force his eyes over the words. Then the buzzing started. Not from the phone, from his desk. His laptop screen flickered, glitched, then filled with white noise, lines of static scrolling across, and then letters typed out like invisible hands were working the keys. Look behind you. Daniel's breath caught. He couldn't move. Every muscle in his body locked as if his bones had frozen. He forced himself to turn, inch by inch. Nothing. The dark room was just that, a room. His roommate. The clutter, the cracked window. Then the laptop chimed again. A new line typed itself, steady, deliberate. I like your red shirt. Daniel's stomach dropped. He looked down. Red t-shirt, damp with sweat now. That's when the phone rang again. Not just the one on the desk. Every phone on the floor. Landlines. Cell phones. A chorus, shrieking at once. The sound flooded the hallway, echoing off the cinder block walls like an alarm only for him. Daniel pressed his hands to his ears, shaking his head, shouting for it to stop. But his phone kept vibrating on the desk, screen glowing with the number. The caller ID stopped his breath cold. It wasn't unknown. It was his own number, calling him, and it would not stop. Daniel froze, words dying in his throat. His roommate wasn't joking. His face was too pale, too hollow. But before Daniel could answer, the lights in the hallway flickered. Once, twice, then cut out completely, plunging them both into darkness. From the black came the sound. Not a ring this time, a whisper, the same voice, soft and wet, curling around his ear. Daniel! He spun, heart hammering. The whisper wasn't coming from the room. It was everywhere. Walls, ceiling, the hollow belly of the dorm itself. His roommate clutched his arm, whispering, "Do you hear that?" The voice grew louder, clearer, no longer hiding behind static. It recited word for word Daniel's thoughts. The words screaming in his skull, panicked, desperate. Run, run, run. Stop it! Daniel roared into the dark, though his voice cracked. What do you want from me? The answer came in a whisper so sharp it might as well have been a knife. Answer! His phone, lying where he'd thrown it, lit up in the hallway. Its cracked screen glowed like a single eye in the dark. 2:13 a.m. again. Always 2:13. The call was still coming in, from his own number. The ringing filled the silence. His roommate backed away, shaking his head, mouthing, "Don't." But Daniel couldn't help himself. His legs moved on their own, dragging him closer. Every step felt heavier, like the floor itself was pulling him in. His hand reached out, trembling, toward the glowing screen. "Don't answer it," his roommate whispered, voice breaking. Daniel's fingers hovered over the phone. And then, as if some part of him had already decided, he pressed accept. The world collapsed into silence. For one endless beat, nothing. No ringing, no whispers, no roommates breathing. Just silence so deep it pressed into his skull. Then, from the receiver, his own voice. Flat, cold, inhuman. "I told you I could see you." And in that moment, Daniel realized he wasn't the one answering the call. He was the one who had been called. Daniel's stomach twisted. The numbers on the screen glared back at him like a wound that wouldn't close. 2:13 a.m. Always the same. He wanted to crush the phone under his heel, grind it to pieces, but some part of him couldn't move, couldn't look away. Behind him, his roommate hovered in the doorway, pale as a ghost. "Man, you look like you've seen something." His voice was low, cautious, like he was speaking to someone balancing on the edge of a cliff. Daniel turned, his lips trembling, but no words came. What could he say? That the phone knew him better than he knew himself? That his own voice had crawled out of the receiver like a hand reaching from the grave? His roommate shook his head, stepping back into the hall. "I swear, your phone never rang." He tried to sound steady, but the way his eyes darted, the way his fingers fidgeted with the doorframe, betrayed him. He had heard something. Maybe not the call, but the whispers, the kind of sound you don't admit to because saying it aloud might make it real. Daniel crouched, picked up the phone with shaking hands. The glass cut into his palm, sharp, small lines of red beading on his skin. He didn't notice. His thumb hovered over the call log. Every entry was the same. Missed call. 2:13 a.m. From Daniel. Page after page. Dozens, hundreds. His chest tightened until he thought his ribs would snap. He hurled the phone at the wall. It cracked in two, plastic guts spilling out across the tile. For the first time that night, silence felt real. Heavy. Absolute. But then his laptop chimed. A single notification box glowing against the dark screen. Incoming call. Daniel. His breath caught. He slammed the lid shut, but the ringing didn't stop. It echoed through the speakers, muffled, insistent, as if the sound wasn't coming from the machine at all, but from inside the room itself. His roommate was gone now. The hall empty. The silence broken only by that steady, shrill tone. Daniel pressed his hands to his ears, rocking on the floor, whispering to himself, "It isn't real. It isn't real." But he knew better. Because when the sound finally cut off, his voicemail pinged. One new message. The timestamp glowed like a scar. 2:13 a.m. Daniel never slept in that dorm room again. The next morning, he packed his things in silence, eyes hollow, movement sharp and mechanical like he was afraid to stop moving. His roommate didn't ask questions, didn't even try. He'd seen enough in Daniel's face to know there were no answers worth hearing. But the phone he couldn't escape. He threw the shattered pieces in the trash, dropped them in the dumpster behind the cafeteria. He even watched the garbage truck haul it away days later. Yet still, every night, his new phone vibrated at exactly 2:13 a.m. No number on the screen this time. Just one word, Daniel. He tried turning the phone off. He tried leaving it at a friend's place. He even smashed the new one with a hammer. Didn't matter. The call always found him. And the worst part? He doesn't answer anymore. He doesn't have to. Because every night, at the exact same time, he hears his own voice whispering back at him from the dark corners of his room, repeating the same words, "I told you I could see you." Daniel stopped being ordinary after that night. He stopped being anything at all. Some say he dropped out of school. Others swear they still see him walking the campus at night, staring at his phone, pale and hollow-eyed, waiting for the next call that never really ends. And the number? Always the same. His own. So tell me, when your phone buzzes in the middle of the night and you see your own name glowing on the screen, would you dare to answer? Or will you let it ring, knowing that ignoring it doesn't make it stop? Because Daniel learned the truth. Some calls aren't meant to be answered. Some calls aren't meant to be ignored either. They're just meant to keep coming. If this story got under your skin, hit that like button to support the channel and help push this video out to more people who love chilling tales like this one. Don't forget to subscribe for daily stories and share this with someone who needs a good scare tonight. Thanks for listening and watching. Another story is waiting for you on your screen right now. I'll see you back here tomorrow. The Window Scratcher. You ever hear something in the night and try to laugh it off? Probably just a tree branch. Probably just the wind. That's how it always begins. Small towns, dark nights, and people convincing themselves nothing's wrong. Sarah was the kind of girl who always believed in fresh starts. 24, just finished college, burned out from city traffic, neighbors screaming through paper-thin walls, sirens every hour. So when she found a cheap cabin out on the edge of nowhere, tucked between rows of pine trees, it felt like a blessing. A place where the loudest thing at night was a coyote or the rain tapping against her roof. She told herself this was peace. Coffee in the mornings, her journal open on the porch, the woods stretching endless and green. But silence has a way of turning on you, like a dog you thought was tame that suddenly bares its teeth. The first night, she heard it. A faint scrape against her bedroom window, just one long drag, like a nail on glass. She froze in bed, heart thumping, until it stopped. When she finally dared to look, the pane was empty, just her reflection staring back, wide-eyed. She laughed at herself. A branch. She even pushed the curtain aside, pretending she wasn't afraid. But the woods outside didn't move. No branch hung close enough. And in the glass, just for a second, she thought she saw another reflection, a pale blur leaning close. She shook it off. New places play tricks on the mind. That's what she told herself as she pulled the blanket tighter. But in the stillness of that cabin, deep in the heart of the woods, something else was awake. Something that had been waiting. And Sarah was exactly where it wanted her. It was close to midnight when Sarah heard it, that scrape at her bedroom window. The first time, she blamed the wind. The second, she thought maybe a branch. But the sound didn't sway. It pulsed, a rhythm. 1, 2, 3, like fingernails dragging slow across a chalkboard. Her pulse spiked. She sat up, toes curling into the wooden floor, and crept to the window. With a shaky hand, she tugged the curtain back. Nothing. Just her reflection in the glass, pale and startled, framed by the dark. She laughed under her breath, a weak sound in a room suddenly too big. "I'm losing it," she whispered. She climbed back into bed, dragging the quilt up to her chin. Then the sound came again, louder, hungrier. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Her throat tightened. This time she didn't check the window. She reached for her phone on the nightstand. No signal, no bars. The screen glared back at her like it was mocking her for being so far from anyone. The scratching stopped. The silence that followed was worse. It pressed in on her, thick and heavy. She strained to hear something, anything, but the night outside was dead still. No coyotes, no wind, just a silence that made her ears ring. Minutes dragged. Her eyelids grew heavy, and just as she started to drift, she felt it, a breath, not her own, damp and cold, brushing against her cheek. She bolted upright. The room was empty. The curtain swayed, but the window was shut, locked. Her skin crawled. She wanted to run outside, to start her car and drive until the cabin was a dot in her rearview mirror. But she couldn't move. Fear pinned her down, holding her tighter than any seatbelt. When she finally forced herself to the window again, she leaned close, scanning the glass. Her own face blinked back at her. Nothing strange, nothing out of place. Until the reflection smiled. Sarah's breath caught. She stumbled backward, heart pounding so hard she could hear it. But the face on the other side of the glass, her face, but not, wasn't laughing with her. It was laughing at her. And just like that, it was gone. The pain was empty again. But she knew, deep in her bones, that something was out there, and it wasn't going away. Sarah bolted upright, her chest heaving like she'd been drowning. She forced herself, against every screaming instinct, to look back at the window. And that's when she saw it, a face, pressed against the glass, skin pale and sagging, like candle wax dripping down a bottle, eyes too wide, lids stretched so far they barely blinked. And that smile, God, that smile, stretched from ear to ear, a grin so sharp it looked like it could cut through the pain itself. Sarah screamed. The lamp on her nightstand flickered once, twice, then went black. When the bulb steadied, the face was gone. Her breath came in shudders. She stumbled from the bed, bare feet slapping against the floorboards as she ran through the cabin. She twisted locks, slammed bolts shut, yanked curtains across every window. But no matter how fast she moved, the silence moved faster, closing in, pressing against her skull, louder than her own pulse. Then came the sound. Not at the window, at the door. A slow, deliberate scratching, as if nails were raking down the wood, tracing the outline of where the latch sat. Sarah froze. The front door rattled once. Then again. She grabbed a fireplace poker from the hearth, her hands slick with sweat, and pressed herself against the wall. "Go away," she choked out, voice barely a whisper. The rattling stopped. For one beat, hope flared. Maybe it was over. Maybe it had left. And then, every window in the cabin exploded inward at once. Glass rained across the floor, shards glittering like ice in the moonlight. The wind screamed through the openings, carrying with it the smell of rot. Sarah spun, heart jackhammering, eyes darting between the shattered panes. That's when she saw it step through. Not crawling, not lunging, walking, slow, patient, the way someone walks into their own home. Its head cocked at an unnatural angle, grin locked in place, eyes fixed on hers as if she were the only living thing left in the world. Her choice was immediate: fight or be taken. With a trembling roar, she lifted the poker high, and the thing smiled wider. When the sun finally dragged itself over the trees, Sarah clung to it like salvation. The pale light filtered through broken glass, warming her skin, and for one fragile moment, she convinced herself it had been a nightmare. Stress, imagination, cabin fever with a cruel sense of humor. She swept the shards from the floor with shaking hands, her body stiff and raw from a night spent in the corner, gripping that fireplace poker like a lifeline. Every creak of the boards still made her flinch. Every shadow in the woods beyond the windows looked like it was leaning closer. By mid-morning, she'd worked up the courage to call the sheriff. Her voice cracked on the phone, but she forced the words out. Intruder, face at the glass, broken windows. She almost hung up halfway through. She sounded insane, and she knew it. But when the cruiser rolled up the dirt path and Sheriff Mathers stepped out, gruff, heavy-set, a man who'd seen too much to laugh at anything, Sarah felt something shift. He didn't mock. He didn't scold. He just walked the perimeter of the cabin with slow, deliberate steps. Jesus, he muttered under his breath. Boot prints, dozens of them, stamped deep into the soft earth, circling her cabin in loops and figure eights. Sarah trailed behind him, her stomach sinking with every print he pointed out. They weren't random. They weren't careless. They traced the walls of her home like a predator pacing the bars of a cage. And then the sheriff stopped. Right beneath her bedroom window, the glass still bore scratches, thin, deliberate lines carved deep into the pane, almost like tally marks. Sarah's throat tightened. She wanted him to tell her it was an animal, a prank, anything but what she already knew. But Mathers just squatted down, one meaty hand rubbing his jaw. Tracks don't lead away, he said finally, his voice flat. What do you mean? Sarah whispered. He straightened, eyes narrowing at the woods beyond. I mean, whoever was here didn't walk off. Sarah followed his gaze to where the footprints ended. They just stopped, in the middle of the dirt, no trail, no drag marks, no sign of retreat, as though whoever or whatever had been watching her hadn't left on foot. Hadn't left at all. Sarah doesn't sleep near that window anymore. She's dragged her bed to the far wall, as if distance alone could save her from whatever lingers out there in the dark. The sheriff never came back, never called with updates. And maybe that's worse. Silence pretending to be safety. Days pass quietly enough. Coffee on the porch. Books stacked half read. She tells herself she's fine. Stronger now. Wiser. But the truth is written in the way she checks every lock 3 times before bed. In the way she keeps that fireplace poker leaned against the wall, always within reach. And some nights, on the still ones when the woods feel too quiet, she swears she hears it again. Not a branch. Not the wind. That slow, deliberate scratching tracing the glass in perfect rhythm. She freezes under her blanket, staring at the opposite wall, refusing to turn her head, refusing to look. Because she knows if she does, she'll see it. That pale face, those impossible eyes, that grin stretching wider than before. So she pretends it isn't real, pretends it's just her imagination, pretends it's just the wind. But deep down she knows, it's still there, waiting, counting. And so let me ask you, when you go to bed tonight, will you dare to look at your window if you hear a sound? Or will you do what Sarah does and keep your eyes shut tight? Because the only thing worse than seeing something at your window is realizing it's been there all along. If this story kept you hooked tonight, don't forget to like the video. It helps the channel grow and pushes it to more people who love chilling tales like this. Make sure you subscribe for daily content and share this with someone who enjoys a good scare. Thank you for listening and watching. There's another story recommended on your screen right now. Click it and keep the night going. I'll see you back here tomorrow.